with it, play with it, play with it. Welcome to today's episode of Play With It with Cass Allen. Today we're talking about dating with STDs. Many of you have been following the show. You know, we've been on the dating pool. The show is about discussing things relative to humanity as it relates to relationships and adding a humorous twist, make it digestible for all of us sometimes. So today we're talking about dating with an STD. For those of you who might not be familiar with the term, an STD is an acronym for sexually transmitted disease. This show is not about naming them. This show is not about discussing the medical side of STDs. It's not about any of that deep diving. We're talking about simply, like I said, on a high level as we do all things. Uh, as it relates to dating with STDs, we're covering dating and finding out that you have an STD. We're talking about having an STD and then deciding to date. We're talking about transparency and basically things that fall under the umbrella of those things. Those three things, I should say. So I'm not going to waste your time. We're going to get right into it. Many people have STDs. I don't have the number. I know there are some illnesses out there that I've seen fall very high on the scales. There are some things out there, STD related, that people are okay passing, they're okay catching. That's not for me to discuss on that level. Um, I'm here to simply talk about dating with an STD and how it impacts the person dating and the person being dated. Whether that STD is contracted during the relationship or before a new relationship. As it relates to transparency, specifically, when do I tell and do I tell at all? Um, I've talked about this before, transparency. And I'll say it again in probably every show. I think transparency is important in a relationship. I think it's important to know what you're working with, who you're working with, and not necessarily always have to wait to ask the question to find the answer to things that are important and affect the direction of the relationship. I also believe people have the right to their privacy, and there are things that do not need to be disclosed, depending on the type of relationship, the longevity, and other factors. It's important for each of us to use discernment. Think about the picture in front of you and what you need to reveal when you need to reveal it, and if you need to reveal it at all. Um, like I said, transparency is not the same as telling everything about you. Transparency to me is being open and honest about things that impact the relationship, being direct and not changing the trajectory of a relationship with dishonest deeds. That's the bottom line. If somebody asks you something, give them an honest answer. You can say an answer to that question to feel it, or you can say I respectfully decline to answer. This is private to me and I'm uncomfortable answering this question. You can say no and still be honest because that's your truth. I don't feel like answering this question. It may set off some alarms, but that's not the point here. The point is transparency. And I've asked people and people have asked me certain things where I've said, I'm not comfortable discussing this with you or at this time or whatever the matter may be. And we need to be respectful of people's boundaries when it comes to that too. Again, then you decide whether or not you want to deal with someone or not based on the answers. Be ready for the repercussions of your answers. If you want to be private, then maybe someone you're trying to reach out to is going to withdraw. So you have to be willing to accept that as a repercussion of your behavior. It's not that anybody is committing wrong behavior. It's just we're not doing it in a transparent and respectful way. You have the STD per se, and you know you have it, and you want to date. It may be something curable, it may not be. Some things walk with you for life, and people consider them minor. They medicate whatever they need to do, to feel comfortable. Contraceptions, protectors, etc. I'm not going into that list because everybody's so damn different. That would be a wasted conversation. But the bottom line is there are a lot of people out here who are dating who are walking around knowing that they have things. I have HPV, herpes, I have HIV, I have AIDS, I have this, I have that, I have syphilis, I have gonorrhea, I have chlamydia, whatever it could be, a number of things. There are people who are actively walking around knowing that they have these STDs and they're transmitting them to other people. I feel for both sides. I feel for the side that thinks it's okay to share these unfaithful events with other people. And I feel for the side who are not protecting themselves when they're dissatisfied with the transmission receipts, you know, especially these of you who are out there with permanence on your STDs. Some things don't go away. So I have encountered people who have been aware of their circumstances and had difficulty dating, depending on what type of circumstance they were facing. And when I talk, remember, I go back a long time. Most of my talk spans over 40 years as an adult. I'm not talking about kiddie stuff and what happened to me before I was 18. That's we're all babies then. And normally I'm not even discussing stuff. Normally 20 and up, 25 and up. It's up for discussion because the brain is forming, it's thinking. I speak of things in their infancy and as they relate to us aging. A lot of people when I was growing up, an STD didn't have a cure like it has today. Some of them didn't have regimens like they have today. They didn't have meal plans and pill plans. People just either caught it and they survived it or they died. So it's a different kind of playing field for me. So I really, like I said, I can't judge stuff because I'm not living that life today where AIDS is not a death sentence, or some of these diseases like hepatitis C used to be like a death sentence. Thank God for technology and innovation that this is no longer the case. But for you generations that now have these long-term medications and alternatives, I find that there's a lot more dating with STDs. I see people that are torn about how to discuss what they have. I'm going to suggest to you the same thing I suggest to everybody I know, just on the pure fact of listening to what you say. Again, transparency. I know there are groups out here that you can join. If you have something, and there are a lot of people who have that same thing, who's going to have the most empathy for you than those who are facing the same sexual challenges as far as, illnesses? So I've always suggested to people, like, if you have herpes, go in a herpes group, go to the herpes facility. Find people that have something in common with you that are not going to shun you. Sometimes it's hard to contract something, I can imagine, from the pain I've seen on people's faces who I've had these private conversations with when they feel lost and like, once they tell somebody what's going on, they're not going to like them anymore. But if you're dating and you have STDs, and unless you have something that you can completely protect yourself from and you're 100% sure, you know, the people that you're dating deserve to know the percentage of risk that they share with your diseases by encountering your body. I couldn't put it more simple. So, you know, I've been in some situations with women who come to me and straight up said, "Look, I like you, you know." And I'm summing it up. Of course, it took more than 20 words, but it was basically, "Look, I like you, but I gotta let you know something, you know. I want to give you some pussy, but that pussy comes with a sexual transmitted disease. You know, it might be risky. They've told me, you know, this is what we can do to prevent it or XYZ. And I have to decide whether or not I want to fuck with them or not, you know. I don't think it's fair to tell you my choice because it really isn't about my choice. I'm simply using myself as an example to say, you know, I'm not just up here talking about other people's experiences. You know, I know what it's like to be told all kinds of things people have, and it was up to me at that time to decide how I wanted to get down. You know, um, I suggest to, you know, if you want to get out there and date and you walking with an STD, that you know your STD in and out so that you can answer any questions a person might have that might be interested in pursuing you. You know, that might say, well, tell me a little bit more about said STD so I can decide if I want to fuck with you. You know, is it this? Is it that? Is it contagious? How is it contagious? What happens to you? What will happen to me? Et cetera, et cetera. You know, then just don't go, I don't know. You know some shit about your shit. It might make the difference in whether someone decides to date you or not, whether or not you take your own shit seriously. Because if you don't know anything about it, now you're forcing me to go out there and do all the research. There are two sides. It's not just the person who's walking around with the STD. It's the date who is sitting there enjoying the date, looking at you, ready to like salivate and tear everybody your part of your body out. You know, you've been dating for weeks and you know they want to munch on you, and now you have something to tell them because you've been dating for a few weeks and your monkey ass is starting to swell and under that consideration, there's something this person needs to know that they might contract if we fuck up. That's the bottom line, isn't it? Isn't that why it's called an STD? Because it can be transmitted unless you control it somehow, either through protection or medication or some type of remission period. And if I'm off base, please, the comments are open. I know some of you are watching the show. The comments are open. I'm always open for education. I'm a proponent of it. You know, none of us know a den of any shit. I know what I know, and that's it. Just like y'all. There's always something to add to it. You know, again, as I have said, if you have an STD and you want to date, if you do not want to disclose your STD status to strangers that might not be apropos to it because they don't share the same empathy or understanding of it, you might want to consider going to groups where the people identify as having the same STD as you or other STDs where you might feel a little more welcome, you know. And let's take that on to people who are dating and you don't have an STD. Your body's healthy. You had all your tests. You passed them all. Negative, 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 negative. You go every 3 months. You get checked out, even though you're not even fucking, because that's how much you love your body. Like, just in case the government doesn't know about some shit that could affect my genitals, let me keep them checked out. Basically like a haircut. You're getting it clean, you're getting it shaved, you're making sure everything's good. You got the doctor saying, okay, I like the way, you know, your thing is designed. Your pH balance is on. It ain't funky. It ain't nasty. You don't have infections. You don't have, what is that other thing that you get? Something. Some kind of if you don't go to the bathroom, I think you can catch some kind of bladder thing. I'm not sure, so forgive me. The bottom line is there are so many ways that we can catch things and, you know, then start transmitting them. Um, Unfortunately, there's a party of people out here. There are a party of people out here who experience dating and they decide to take the protection away, or they have risky sex where they're slightly protected, or they fall in love and decide that they're both going to be monogamous, or they fall in love and both say that they are both going to be monogamous, but they are not. There are so many passageways to an STD. I knew of a gentleman once who had a partner for a long time. He was very faithful. He ended up dying due to the unfaithfulness of his mate, as is such common. He contracted an STD during the dating of a monogamously inferred man who was not. Unfortunately, rest in peace. I had another friend. I'd probably put a dagger through someone over who also faced the same situation. Decided to explore sexuality and wasn't careful, faced his demise. I had another friend who used to do my hair, he faced demise. My best friend used to go with me everywhere when I was a DJ. We were a force. Faced his demise. One of my other best friend's mates faced his demise. I could go on, as many of us could, who lived through that time where STDs were more deadly. Again, like I said, today, I've interviewed people who've said, I don't mind catching an STD. Ask directly, how would you feel if someone gave you XYZ? The answer was, I'd be okay with it. I would just take my medication. That's it. I'm talking about stuff that used to have us in quarantine. So that's why, as I mentioned, I cannot speak on that level, but I can say that I know people out here who have contracted things today they've not been pleased to contract. Again, I think of another situation that crosses my mind of a friend who had not dated in years. Powerhouse. I'm not dating because the scene is fucked up. Everybody's full of shit. Said person decided, I've met the person of my dreams. I gotta give this dating shit a try. I gotta do this. I can't lose this opportunity. The person of my dreams. This is my soul mate. After not dating for many years, at least a decade, contracted an STD because the other person was lying and simply slaying and saying what was needed to be said to get said genitals on fire. So unfortunately, this person hadn't dated for what seemed like centuries to me. At the rate I was dating, I'm thinking, what the hell? Like, you must be dried up like a raisin. It's more moist than you. That's what I was thinking, having fun with my friend. Like, are you serious? Does the thing even respond to its name anymore? Does it even know what it is? Does it know its use? You know how a house cat don't know how to hunt? It's like, is the thing even still awake? Does it come out? Is it allow visitors? That it was that kind of situation. So, it was heartbreaking to see someone who had secured their genitals so firmly and been so safe re-enter this dating scene and contract something that's uncurable. That's the sad part. No, so you were dating and this person went off the market instantly. Mind blown, devastated, destroyed. Hasn't dated since. It's been a few years again. I don't tease about it anymore because it's a different issue now, you know. And it's common, I'm talking people, my peers. I'm not talking 18-year-olds, 30-year-olds even. Y'all know I'm up there. Come on, I got white hair. Huh? I know it doesn't always mean you're older, but in this case it does. I've been out here 6 decades, and I've been dating through them. I've dated, I've gotten married, I've gotten divorced, I've gotten separated, I've done it all. I've had them all, the marriages, the dissolutions, dating on my dating journey through life. Always wondering, how safe are we once we enter that zone, where we're monogamous and we're gonna open all gates now. That's a heavy one, and I wouldn't want to be any of you out there right now. Dating to me right now is just, whew, baby. Comes with its rewards because through dating, that's how I met this young lady. However, let me tell you, we know we got to go through the jungle, right? Got to go through the jungle to get to the beautiful river. And that's what I did, and a large part of that for me was getting regularly tested. Again, I was one of those who got tested who wasn't sexually active at one time. As I told y'all, I took a 3 year sabbatical, and a part of the reason was because the fish out there were making me nervous. And I shouldn't say that because some people take that as an insult, so I'll retract that. The dating party at the time was making me a little nervous. I used the word fish to describe the parties that didn't seem that safe, the ones that, like, their bodies were screaming, "Don't come over here," between their legs, even though they were like in their faces, like, you better bring your ass on over here. The below was going, "Don't fall for it." And I'm not being funny. I've been in several situations where I've been blessed to be triggered by women who had STDs who weren't planning to share that news. But through discernment, I found out, and I was upset. I felt disrespected that they didn't take the time to tell me that they had these things and they were just willing to share with me. That transparency thing to me is important. You might not want to tell me before you give me some pussy or before she sucks your dick, but I think before that act takes place, you need to let people know. We know some very wealthy celebrities who got in trouble for not informing people of what was going on medically in their genitals, and they passed some shit around. So, you ask yourself, do I tell? Yeah, yes, the fuck you tell. As soon as you decide you want to fuck, you tell people, look, you know, right now I got some bumps between my legs. And I don't think that we should have intercourse because I have HIV. Or right now I got herpes flares and I got blisters popping all over my lips. So that's what it is. It's not acne. I can't suck your dick right now. You got to be honest with this stuff. But if you have no intentions of engaging with a person sexually, I don't believe it's anybody's fucking business what kind of STDs you have. I don't think anybody has to make a proclamation about such a personal part of the body and such a personal conversation that has nothing to do with anything that another person might acquire. If I'm not planning to share any of my physical body with you, there is no need for me to map out the physical details of my body. Whether it's an STD, a beauty mark, a mole, a tattoo, a fucking burn, a scar, it's none of your fucking business unless I'm showing it to you. So I respect people with STDs. I don't think you have to reveal, you know, if it's truly just that, a sexually transmitted disease, you don't have to tell me shit if I'm never going to be with you sexually. If it's not something that I can contract by kissing you on your cheek, and some friends kiss on the lips, if I can't get it that way, if I can though, you better tell me, bitch. You better tell me. I've been blessed. I don't wish anything on anybody. I've been in situations where I could have been the unlucky one too. I don't know anybody who hasn't had unprotected sex at some point. I'm sure you exist, and you're welcome to come down in the comments and blow my fucking mind. You know, there are plenty of times I did things if the person that I was with had some shit, I would have it too. And by plenty, I mean more than three or four. I think a lot of us can say that. We played dodgeball a lot, regardless of how careful we've been with some of them. We haven't been careful with all of them because there's a point where you fall in love and you stop fucking using protection because you trust your mate, and all of them aren't to be trusted. And we don't know which ones are guilty and we don't know which ones are innocent. And by that true definition of itself, we played roulette every time we did it. We played based on what somebody told us, and we hoped to be true. So for those of you who've been able to avoid STDs, you know, see your blessing, especially if you made it to the sixth decade like myself. You know, a lot of people are not here today because they made bad choices during the dating season, either before they contracted an STD or they made bad choices while they had one that created life situations for other people. So, like I said, there's no shame because a lot of people have STDs. I don't know who the fuck doesn't want to talk about it. I read that 80% of people have fucking herpes. 80. 80% of 6 billion people have herpes. Then 480 million? How many? I don't 4.8 billion. Let me get my math right. If 6 billion people, 80% of 6 billion people have herpes, then 4.8 billion people have herpes. So why the fuck are y'all hiding it? Why aren't you talking about it? It's the 20% who don't have it who should be talking about it because it's normalized now. You know, let people know. Because does anybody even know if you have herpes, can you, and someone else have herpes and you combine with each other? What happens if you, what happens? Do you still have to use protection? Who can automatically answer that question? Or do you just don't have to use protection because you can't violate each other? I mean, it's obvious I've been blessed not to know because I haven't had it. Because I like to research shit. I'd have all the answers for y'all I possibly could think of. You understand? Because I try to take my shit seriously, especially when I have my own genetic medical challenges that I live with every day. Um, but nevertheless, when do you tell? Hey, look, I want you, but I'm not going to be able to have you as much as I want to because I have a lot of flares. This is real shit. When do you tell people the truth? Disclose so people know what they're fucking with. I'm taking the pills. I got HIV, but I want you. There are people who will still date you. If you feel uncomfortable in a circle of people who don't have it, work your well, work yourself into a circle of people who do, and you'll find more empathy. It's that way often. People who are struggling with something and feel like outcasts tend to find unity amongst each other if they look. On a sidebar, I was watching a show the other day. It was called Pop the Balloon for transgenders. Females had converted to males and males had converted to females and they were dating each other. Because, and a lot of them said, this is where I'm comfortable. Because they understand me. You with me. Shit, you are me. You the woman now. I'm the man. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not being funny. I just, it turned out to be a pun that tickled me. But that's the bottom line. Go where you feel comfortable. Go where you feel invited, no matter what you have. There are groups for every illness out here. People against, people are for, people for this, people for that. Donate to this. Marathons where you run for stuff. Go to those marathons and meet all those people running because those are people who have empathy. Meet all the organizers. There's a lot of dating potential right in front of you if you get out in situations that affect you. And people run for AIDS and HIV all the time. People are looking for cures. You know, we have transgender centers, gay centers, health clinics and hospitals, places all over the world, foundations, support centers, and they're all doing the same thing. They're supporting sexual transmitted diseases by way of looking for cures and ways to maintain. What better people to date? Stop going to the fucking club hoping a stranger is going to share your glory and your problem and relate to you. You know? Oh, well, he's cute, so let me tell him all this about me so I can fuck him. Where you think you got your better chances? I think you got better chances at the march for yourstd.com, where everybody's like, it's good to see you here because we all marching for the same thing. Yeah, you cute bitch. What's your name? What's your number? I think that sounds a little better to me. And even during those events, some people don't have these afflictions. Like I said, but at least you're gonna find empathy if you strike up some conversations and start dating, because that's not gonna happen that day, obviously. But a lot of times at events like that, people share their feelings. Y'all know what I'm talking about out there. I see you. To wrap this up, we on the same note we always on. At the end of the day, it's all about transparency. Whether you're dating with an STD currently or you have contracting an STD while you're dating, at the bottom line, there's transparency. You know, people that you plan to engage with, if something affects their life, they have the right to know. They have the right to decide which path they choose to take with you, whether or not they want to go on that journey, whether or not they want to take that risk, whether or not that risk is worth it. You know, you just because you're lonely, you don't have the right to set up an image of something that's not true and present with things lacking that you have in this case, you know. It's only fair that you be honest with people if you decide you want to fuck them. There's my clause. If you don't have to go on a first date with someone and say, "Look, I have STD XYZ." There's no need for that. You may tell that. How many first dates are you going to tell that to and not have a second date? We're talking about situations where your dating is going to turn to more than that, you know. Y'all think some of you don't have to tell because you have protection. Protection is not 100%. You still have to tell. I have this, but with this protection, we're gonna beat the odds. This has been Cass Allen on Pay With It. Have a good day and have a good night.